Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Carcast with JW and
JD. We're just two guys talking about cars. Hope you enjoy it. Hello, everyone. This is JD, and I'm here with my friend JW. We are two car guys. All we talk about is cars. All we think about is cars. And we had a couple of conversations that lasted 4 to 5 hours. We enjoyed it, and we decided we wanted to share it with the rest of y'all. So with that, I'll give you to my buddy John.
Okay, I'm JW. I love cars. People think of me as a person of music, but I actually like cars more than music. I just haven't had a lot of the financial ability to pursue that, so I pursued music. Anyway, my car journey started when I was like 3, because my dad was always into cars, and I was always into whatever my dad was back at that age. You got to remember, this is 1976. And,
Oh, wow. I never knew it started that early.
Yeah. And so basically, I was just, not only was I into cars, but I was into mechanical things. That's why I liked Lego and stuff from the beginning. And the more mechanical it was, the better I liked it. So like when, and I know this is about cars, but it's still related. When the Lego Technic sets came out and they started having the engines with the little pistons that would go up and down, and you could build the transmissions and stuff. I really loved that. Matter of fact, I can remember going to the store with my dad to buy a Christmas gift, which was a big, Lego set.
Yeah.
Where you could only do it like once a year because they were so expensive.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Like back in the '80s, because we're both Gen Xers. Back in the at Christmas, you're like, the way we did it, you'd get some small presents, but you'd get like one big $100 present to be like an RC car or like a big Lego set or something.
I remember going to the store with him and looking at the ages on the side of the box, going, I'm not that old yet. And he's like, don't worry about it, son. You're smart enough.
Amazing.
And so he just picked it up and, I got that. So, but anyway, he would show me cars, especially his older cars, and tell stories about his older cars. And so from the time I was like 3 until probably early teens, I was into mostly just like 50s cars. Just because I liked the style and how they were old and different, and they were kind of like the glory days, and hearing the stories about those from my dad. And eventually he ended up buying me a couple of books and stuff, and I looked through them, car books, and then ever since then, I just, if it has to do with cars, or if it's a magazine or whatever, usually I pick it up if I can afford it. The other thing is, I did get into model building when I was a teenager, and I built quite a few, but they weren't like super good. I got to a certain point and I was like, yeah, that's good enough. But I had cars in that collection, and now in my diecast collection, I have, I think, over 350 of them.
I have not seen those yet. I'm definitely going to have to see that.
That's basically my car story. I've always wanted to build like a hot rod, but I've just never had the place or the tools, or, and so it's like, well, whatever. But I can always, with games and stuff, especially like Gran Turismo, because it's what I play all the time. The physics on it are so realistic that you really do get more of an experience of driving different vehicles, like actual vehicles, by playing the game, where like the only thing that would be better as far as an experience would be actually just driving those vehicles. Like I remember I think it was Gran Turismo 3, there was you could get a TBR, and I think it was like at the Cerbera or something like that, and it had this really quirky handling feature where if you were going around a sweeping corner, it would start to understeer. You're not modified or anything.
Yeah.
It would start to understeer, and then as soon as the weight shifted towards the outside of the corner, it would actually like
oversteer.
No, it would lock up. It would be not lock up. It would I'm looking for a word.
Weight transferred, and it would feel really rolly, and then it would grip up and go.
Yeah, it would grip.
Okay,
yeah, as soon as the weight transferred, and then but the funny thing was at the time I had this Toyota pickup that was like an '86, I think, and it wasn't all-wheel drive or nothing. It was just a little Toyota pickup, and I remember the first time I went onto an off-ramp or an on-ramp, whatever, to go onto the interstate. Yeah. And I take them pretty fast because I like to get up to speed before I ever even merge. And I started going around that, and I felt the G-forces to the side, and I was like, oh, okay. And I could actually hear the wheels. They weren't squealing yet, but, they were right on the edge. Chirping, and then all of a sudden, that weight transferred, and it wasn't anything I did. It was just the truck reacting to how you're driving it. And then it just gripped. And I was like, oh, that reminds me of how the TBR
I love handles. I love how you tried to rationalize the off ramp, which is every car guy knows that it's like, oh look, an excuse to hammer it.
Well, no, I actually do like to take the off ramps fast just because of the merging. And I've had several driving jobs in my life, and there's hardly anything more that makes you angry more than going fast down an interstate and someone merging, and either they slowing down almost to a stop so you can get by them, or cutting in front of you. So just merge at the same speed, unless there's like a traffic jam or road work or whatever. It's always what makes it best. Yeah, in my opinion.
My background in cars actually doesn't start with cars at all. It starts with tractors and farm equipment, because I grew up on a farm, and one of the earliest pictures I have is with me and my father, and we're laying on the couch, and I'm laying on his belly, and he's got a John Deere equipment catalog, and it's for a disc. And me and my dad, he would bring home, he was a farmer, his dad was a farmer, and I'm come from a third generation farming family, and so dad would come home, and he would find a piece of equipment or a tractor that he liked, or wanted to look into or something, never buys, just window shopping like you would do with a car, like a young kid getting a Corvette brochure. But he would bring these manuals home, and then he would put me on his lap, and we'd read them. And that's really what it was part of the initial spark. And then I grew up in probably what was the golden age of American cartoons for car guys. I had, and TV, because stuff like the A-Team, Transformers, Knight Rider,
all those
GoBots, the Wraith. I didn't see the Wraith till later, but I mean, in the 80s, just it's just Ecto 1, that was a big one. So I grew up during that era. There was one show, I think it was called Meet the Superchargers, that me and my dad watched, and it was about racing. So that was one part. And then my dad, being a farmer, we'd go to the fair, and we would go to tractor pulls. So my first exposure to motorsports was watching Pro Stock, International, and John Deere tractors battle it out on the sled pull, and four-wheel drive trucks and stuff like that. And I haven't went in a couple years, but to this day, sled, if there's one motorsport that I'm familiar with the competitors, and I can go back into the pits and not feel awkward or anything, and feel like I'm really in my wheelhouse, it's with tractor pulling and truck pulling.
Cool. So okay, you said you grew up around tractor pulling, but were you ever like around a puller? Like did you know someone who was a puller and actually got to like talk to them about it and stuff?
Well, in the 70s, in the late 70s, when there were still guys taking a farm tractor out of the field and then bolting some upgrade parts on it, like maybe turning up the fuel pump. I don't know exactly what they do, but they call it turning it up, where they they turn a screw and it
Yeah.
puts more fuel to the engine. And they were just mechanically injected farm tractors, no electronics or anything. And, it's basically guys turning up the injection pumps on them, putting bigger turbos on them. This was the era when, guys figured out how to put twin turbo, feed one turbo with another turbo. Compound turbo charging, where it really came into existence. And my father and his friend were big pulling fans in high school. They went to something called the M&W Power Show, and it was featured Pro Stock, which was the and Super Stock. And Pro Stock is more, at that time it was an entry level category, and the main difference between Pro Stock and Super Stock is a Pro Stock can run one turbocharger, but a Super Stock is allowed to have multiple turbochargers, and the way they set them up is they'll have one turbocharger feeding another one in stages, and it works just like a jet turbine. But my father and his friend, when they got out of high school, they were working class men with, they worked at factories and they farmed when they got home. And there were a group of about 3 of them, and my father I don't think he was involved he never drove the tractor, he never worked on the tractor, but he just rode around with them. And so after that, he got hooked on it. There's a guy by the name of Bernie Platts, and he has an Alice Chalmers Super Stock named Little Bad Alice. You might have seen it on TV. And he lives within driving range of us, and he's worked on our tractors before, and so Dad's known him for quite a long time, and we are within driving distance of the legendary Schnitker brothers pulling team. So Dad knows he not really well, but we do know the Schnitkers. Cool. I've talked to Dennis and I think and Rodney before, and my dad later when he he had a friend from work that was also into it. He was a farmer, and he was into tractor pulling too, and it was really great because Dad had John Deere and the other guy had International. And
so it's kind of a friendly rivalry.
Yeah, if anybody knows anything about tractor pulling, John Deere versus International is your big rivalry. And so it's always great, we'd rib each other about the red tractors versus the green tractors. And so they decided to have a pull near where my dad's friend lived, and they were asking for volunteers, and my dad and his friend volunteered to the pull. So Dad got to work that pull, and I believe he might have worked our local county fair pull, because the guy that the friend of my father's works. My father's friend, I don't know if he works to this day because he had some cancer issues, but he helps in weighing the tractors and kind of, he helps run it. So basically what he does, what he does is kind of, help the, guys get, lined up to the weigh scale to make sure they're making class weights.
Right.
And
join us next time when we cover more subject matter in part 2.
All right, well, that's about all I got. You got anything?
I'm done.
All right, well, this has been
JW
and JD,
and we'll see you on the next one.